Chapter 5. Kid Normal. As Murph leaned up against the corridor wall, enjoying the feel of the cool paint against his befuddled brain, he felt a sharp poke in his back. It was Mary. "Not the most impressive of starts, was it?" she asked him, screwing up the corner of her mouth. "Well, it's a bit hard to be impressive when you've got absolutely no idea what's going on," Murph blurted out. "What on earth did I miss over the last few weeks? Was that role play? I hate all that stuff. We had a woman come into my old school and spend the afternoon making us pretend to be the farm animal we feel closest to. I was a goat." Mary glanced at his hair and nodded sagely. Yeah, I would have said goat, or sheep. Your eyes are quite far apart." "Oh, thanks a lot. Anyway," said Murph, "you've got to help me out." Behind Mary, an old man who seemed to be some sort of caretaker was pushing the broken TV on a trolley. Murph gestured at it. "What was all that about? What does CT stand for?" "Capability training, of course," replied Mary, moving to one side to let the caretaker pass. "You know, when you show everyone how you're getting on with your cape." "What is this obsession with capes around here? That's like the 4th time today I've heard someone talk about them, and I haven't seen a single person wearing one." "Wearing a cape? What do you think this is, Halloween school?" "Not the capes you wear, capes you have. You know, your capability." "What is yours anyway?" "By the sound of it, you're like me, but without the umbrella." "Like you?" "Yes, you know, you're a skimmer, right? Or do you prefer the official name? Terrain circumvention." "Now you're just making sounds and I have no idea what they are," said Murph, resting his forehead against the wall again. "Just humour me for a minute. When you say capability, do you mean like a skill? Because I'm pretty good at Minecraft. Will that do?" Mary laughed sarcastically. Then, when she saw the worried look on Murph's face, she took on a puzzled expression herself. "Your capability is your power, Murph." "What, like a superpower?" "Well, nobody's called it that for like 30 years, but yeah, if you want to go retro." She adopted a fake American accent. "A superpower. You saw Timothy, didn't you?" Yeah. So what's his power? Sorry, his cape." "He's the amazing red-faced boy, is he?" "Shame the TV broke before he got a chance to show us what other colours he can go." This time Mary didn't laugh. "The TV didn't break. He made that happen. Timothy's got teletech. He can control electrical stuff. Or he will be able to when he's trained properly." Murph's brain was working overtime. "And I suppose Nellie can change the colour of her hair and shut windows on demand?" "No!" Mary actually stamped her foot. "That would be silly." "Thank goodness, because this whole thing was really starting to get freaky." "She can control storm clouds." "Right, obviously. So what's the next lesson? Climbing buildings and shooting webs out of my wrist?" "No, actually it's double maths." "Moon maths or normal person maths?" "Just maths, Murph," sniffed Mary before turning away from him and disappearing into the girls' toilet. "This is still a school, you know. Not much good being able to fly if you can't add up, is it?" Fly? Murph thought back to his mum's conversation with Mr. Superman the previous week. Everything was becoming clear, but not in a good way. It was like unfogging the car windscreen, only to discover you were about to drive off a cliff. Actual crikey, he thought to himself, suddenly not looking forward to tomorrow's capability training lesson one little bit. These people think I can actually fly. For years now, Murph and his mum had had an agreement. No, more than an agreement, a pact. She wasn't allowed to ask the question. You know the one, the mum question, the one to which there is only one possible answer. The question is this. "So," and the mum can drag this word out for several seconds, "how was school?" The time-honoured answer is, okay, I suppose, but it must be delivered within 0.25 seconds, so it usually sounds more like, murky suppose. Murph had made his mum agree on pain of sulks not to do the question anymore. So that evening, after picking a silent Murph up from the school, driving him home in silence and eating silent sausage, wordless mash and taciturn beans, Murph's mum simply sat there with her eyebrows raised and waited for Murph to give her the verdict. Andy was sleeping over at a friend's house, which should have made things a bit easier, but each line Murph rehearsed in his head seemed worse than the last. Where on earth should he start? He couldn't exactly say, "So, you know this new school? Well, turns out it's a special secret school for kids with superpowers. Weird, eh? Anyway, I haven't got any powers, so the first lesson tomorrow is going to be a bit of a challenge." Or, "So, I made friends with someone who can fly." Or, "Mum, I really need to ask you about girls. Is it normal for them to conjure thunderstorms out of thin air?" So instead, Murph stayed silent, and his mum gazed at him with an encouraging expression on her face that looked as if it might crumble into pieces at any moment. Only it didn't. Murph looked back at his mum and managed to force a small smile. He was remembering the advice she always gave him when things felt unmanageable. "Problems don't go away on their own," she would tell him. "But problems are cowards and bullies, and they only take advantage if they think they can win. Face them. Look them in the eye, show them you're not scared. If you show them you're not scared of them, they'll run a mile." And so, with those words in mind, at school the next morning, Murph summoned every ounce of courage he had in his body, including the small amounts usually stored in his toes, and said the words before he could give himself a chance to back out. "I am not, in fact," he declared in a loud, confident voice, "able to fly." It was the beginning of the daily capability training lesson, and Murph had decided to face his problems head on. Mr. Flash had called him to the front of the class, and before he had time to clear the chairs away, Murph had stopped him with a raised hand and told the whole class that he had something to share. It wasn't going down well. "What on earth are you doing at this school, then?" sputtered Mr. Flash, his head going so red it looked like a tomato with a moustache stuck on the front. Murph took a deep breath. It was time to come clean. "I have literally no idea," he said in a quiet but firm voice. "I have made friends with a girl who apparently can fly. She is sitting next to another girl who can control storm clouds. Timothy here," he gestured at Timothy, who was looking at him as if he were a small and not especially attractive caterpillar, "can make electronics go fizz, and she, Murph carried on, pointing at a rotund, curly-haired young lady in the second row. "Actually, I have no idea what she can do." "I'm Hilda, and I can summon 2 tiny horses," she said nervously. "Right, Hilda here is a horse, a tiny horse summoner. I, on the other hand, am just a normal kid." Mr. Flash really did look as if he was about to pop. He appeared to be speechless, which made him, if anything, even more like an actual tomato. Suddenly, he seemed almost to vanish as he activated his own capability, incredible speed. He flashed to the back of the classroom and peered at Murph from a distance. Then, papers blew from desks as he raced back to the front so that they were practically standing nose to nose. "A normal kid?" he bellowed at the top of his voice. The class erupted into shrieks of delighted laughter. One or two of Timothy's friends started chanting, and it quickly caught on. "Normal kid! Normal kid! Normal kid! Normal kid!" "Silence!" roared Mr. Flash, zipping around the class like a red-tipped tornado trying to restore order. But he'd lost control, and he wasn't the only one. As he'd explained to his students on day one, it takes concentration to keep your capability in check. And concentration had gone right out of the window. With a tinkling, neighing sound, 2 tiny white horses materialized out of thin air and galloped across the desktops. The replacement TV, which was standing in the corner, exploded, and a huge clap of thunder sounded outside. A tallish boy in a blue top on the other side of the classroom emitted a small noise like a balloon being let go, and his head inflated to 4 times its normal size. Amongst the chaos, the chanting continued, but gradually the words seemed to get jumbled up, and before long it sounded as if the class was chanting something else. The name, in fact, that Murph Cooper was to be known by from that day onwards. "Kid, normal, kid, normal, kid, normal." 20 minutes later, Mr. Superman was looking stressed. He'd just been given some very disturbing news. No powers at all? He wondered, furrowing his brow. No, sir. None whatsoever, replied Mr. Flash. The CT teacher was standing in front of Mr. Superman's desk with his legs apart and his hands behind his back. I thought he was joking at first, but it's true. Kid normal, they've started calling him. Taking the mick like. Head teacher thought back to his conversation with Murph's mum in the street outside the school at the end of the previous week and realized that he'd made a rather stupid error. But he hadn't come to be in charge of a top-secret school by owning up to his mistakes. Well, he gazed out of the window, pretending to ponder. There's obviously been a foul-up somewhere along the line, hasn't there? The head teacher turned back to face Mr. Flash, thinking fast and considering his options. What would happen if he admitted he'd enrolled a non-super child to his school by accident? He'd be fired before he could say, "Whoops, I stupidly admitted a non-super kid to my super school because of a misunderstanding over the word fly." On the other hand, what would happen if Murph was allowed to stay? What would it be like for the school? What would it be like for Murph? Like most leaders throughout history at one point or another, Mr. Superman was hoping desperately that someone else would solve the problem for him. "What do you think I should do, Mr. Flash?" he mused, fake casually. To Mr. Flash, the answer was as plain as the bushy moustache on his face. "Kick him out," he said meanly. "We've never had a kid with no capability at this school. It would be a travesty. A kid without a cape is like a swan." He paused, trying to work out what the most important part of a swan was. "Yes, Mr. Flash," said Mr. Superman. "Like a swan," Mr. Flash concluded decisively, unable to think of anything a swan had. "A swan? Never had a swan in the school either. You'd kick it out, wouldn't you?" Mr. Superman rolled his eyes and turned to look out of the window again, unable to shake the image of Mr. Flash booting a swan out of the school gates. Strangely entertaining though it was, this pleasing mental picture was not helping him make a decision, so he turned back round and adopted his most dramatic face as Mr. Flash continued to plead with him. "No one without a cape has ever been allowed to have anything to do with this school." The head teacher stopped him there. "Well, there has been one, of course," he said. "Oh, him. He doesn't count," spat Mr. Flash. Mr. Superman needed time to think. "Well, thanks for your input, Mr. Flash. I'll consider what to do in due course." And with that, he sat down, wondering desperately how he could kick Murph out of the school now without it becoming obvious that he'd made a gigantic error by allowing him to come there in the first place. Mr. Flash made a cross noise, looking for all the world as though he was about to go and find a swan to kick. Then, abruptly, he seemed to blur and vanish as his cape was activated once again. Moving so fast that the human eye was unable to track him, he left the room like a blast of angry wind and was hurrfing in his own classroom at the other end of the building within seconds. Mr. Superman, who had superhuman strength, but perhaps only averagely human intelligence, didn't even notice that he'd stolen a biscuit on his way out.